Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about peace, and we're going to start with a story about the Colombian children's peace movement. Now, Colombia is a very war-torn place, and there are some kids who really wanted peace for their country, and that's what we're going to start with. Oops. So adults are usually regarded as the leaders in working for peace, and for a good reason, as many adults have made a tremendous difference in trying to seek peace. Yet children can make a tremendous difference too. Farlise Kale is one of those children. She is one of 26 children who organized an election in her home country of Colombia as it was being torn apart by violence. On October 25th in 1996, so 14 years ago, 2.7 million children in Colombia cast their votes for 12 basic rights that included the right to love and family, the right to a clean environment, the right to justice, and the right to peace. With the aid of UNICEF, which you probably know about UNICEF, the United Nations Children Emergency Fund, and adults, with the help from adults from the community, the children of Colombia started a movement that created peace zones in schools and in parks. And a year later, 10 million adults also voted for peace in a national election because of what the kids had started. That is pretty amazing. So why was Colombia in need of peace? Well, in 1948, a civil war broke out in Colombia. A civil war is one where the opposing factions both live in the same country. And these wars can be particularly destructive and difficult to end. Often civil wars have the appearance of being about two groups with different identities that can't get along. So think about the Civil War back in the day in the US. You had the North and the South, people with differences. But however, scholars and researchers have determined that most civil wars are actually caused when one group tries to control all the resources, which results in limited access to resources for other groups who become frustrated and take up arms. Does that sound familiar? Things like that have happened in this country too, huh? And this is why one of the reasons why war, and hence peace, is a justice issue, because often it has to do with someone trying to control all the resources and keeping other people down. Another reason is because the toll of war generally falls heaviest on those marginalized groups. And the war in Colombia continues to this day. Still, the children of Colombia did not give up. Supported again by UNICEF, they established the Retorno de la Alegría, pardon my bad Spanish, Return to Happiness initiative. This program trains youth to be peer counselors to youth and children suffering from the effects of war. Over 500 volunteers have been trained in counseling, therapy, peace building, and self-esteem building skills. They work with individuals and institutions like schools and religious organizations and the government. So being a peace builder, it takes skills. It takes a little bit of, knowledge, maybe some training to really know how to be effective at it. But young people don't need to wait until they become adults to develop these skills, as the children in Colombia have so clearly proven. So I have some quotes from some of the kids that participated in this. And Farlise Kale, the girl that started it, one of the kids that started it, she said, "Children are sweet and beautiful, but we want to show adults that the role of the child must be elevated. There are acute crises in countries when children have to make up part of the solution. You say children are the future, but we are the present, a present which we all have to build together." I love that, because everyone always says children are the future, which is true, but it's such a good point. No, children are the present too. They're here, they're now, and can make a difference. You guys can make a difference. Another quote Angelica, 13 years old. She said, without equal education, children who have nothing can never have the same opportunities as those who have everything. Everyone needs a chance for an education, or there's going to be no equality. Juan, 16 years old, said, on the day of the children's mandate, there was peace in Colombia. If there can be one day of peace, why not a week, a month, a year, 50 years? Why not 50 years of peace to make up for our 50 years of war? So that's what some of the participating kids had to say about it. So in order to have peace, you have to be able to cooperate with people. And sometimes you end up in, it's hard to cooperate, you end up in conflicts. And we often find ourselves involved in conflicts because we didn't make good decisions. We all like to think that our decisions are mostly logical and rational, but we all hold certain biases that can lead us to make illogical decisions. So bias, one definition for bias, according to dictionary.com, is a particular tendency or inclination, especially one that prevents unprejudiced consideration of a question. So basically bias is, you guys know what bias is, but it's having a particular way of thought without actually thinking about it. So when in consideration of a question, or when you're making a decision, you just have a particular tendency regardless of what's around you or what the facts might say. So there's different types of biases. Let me share my screen. I will show you. All right. And I will post the link to this handout that we're going to look at with the video and on the Facebook page where I post the video. So, herd of sheep bias. This is when we don't think critically. I'll zoom in, but it's a little bit, text is a little bit not great there, not very clear. Herd of sheep bias is when we don't think critically about our choices and our beliefs. Instead, we choose and believe based on the beliefs and choices of those around us. So you guys have probably encountered this among your friends. You're doing stuff with all your friends, and if all your friends think one way, it's really easy for you to just go along with that, right? And sort of think, okay, well, they're all choosing that, so I'll choose that too, and they're all going to believe that, so I'll believe it too. Without actually really thinking it through for yourself. It's them, not me. This is when we make choices based on a bias we might not even know we have it. Cherry picking bias. This is really common, and this is lots of people do this, and it's one of the problems with why there's so much division in the politics of our country right now, I think. So cherry picking bias. So this is when we make choices based on the actions or information that confirm our own beliefs that we already have, while ignoring those facts and information, the actions that don't agree with our beliefs. So there's so many things out there. You can almost always find some piece of information that will support what you already think. So if you think something and you see that little fact and said, oh, that supports my argument, you say, hey, see, I'm right because this supports what I think. Except it might be the only one little thing, that fact that agrees with that, when all the other facts say, no, that's not right. So you just sort of look around and say, oh, well, that sort of supports what I think, so then I must be right. But it's really not looking around at taking a broad look at all the information out there and making an informed decision. It's just sort of, you're starting with what you already think and looking for information that agrees with you. So that's not so good. Set in stone bias. This is when we make choices that are based too heavily on one instance or trait or action from the past. Now, here's a silly little example. I once had, I love fish. I like to eat fish. I live on the coast. But I've never been a big fan of halibut. And I got halibut. I was at a restaurant once and they didn't have much I wanted. I ended up getting halibut. It wasn't very good. So ever since that day, like nope, I don't like halibut. I don't want to eat halibut. I didn't hate it, but like, nope, I wouldn't eat it. Well, it turns out I've had it since, and it can be very good. It's still not my favorite. But that time I got it, that time, it was just overcooked. It wasn't well prepared. It just wasn't very good. It wasn't the fish, but because I had it that one time, I didn't really like it. I had this total bias against halibut. And so it was just based on that one instance, that one time. And it wasn't looking at that broader picture. It really wasn't a fair assessment. Silly example, but apt. The bad orchard bias. This is when we see those who are similar to us as individuals, who can make poor choices. And we see them as one apple in otherwise good orchard. So, right? So not everyone is perfect. You look at someone, one of your friends or someone who's like you, and you say, oh, well, they just made a bad decision, but it's okay. They aren't bad. They just made a bad decision. We all make bad decisions sometimes. But when someone who is different than us, maybe a different race, maybe a different religion, makes a poor choice, which we all do, we allow that to be a reflection against their entire race, religion, and we see the entire orchard is tainted. So one person, a different race, makes a bad decision. A Black man kills someone. That's definitely a bad decision, right? And you say, oh, well, that means it's not just a bad apple. That must mean everyone. That must mean all Black people are bad, right? Which is obviously ridiculous. So that's the bad orchard bias. Finally, there's the me bias. This is when we make choices based on giving ourselves more credit for a group effort than someone who is neutral would give us. So the group makes an effort and you give yourself all the credit for it. And that can cause bias as well. So what I want you to do, you have an assignment. And as I said, I will share this document with the different types of biases with you. And I'm also going to share a list of scenarios. There are 6 different scenarios. The first one is, my sister drives me crazy. She just goes along with whatever her friends have to say. That's an easy one. And what I want you to do is match up the different scenarios with those different types of bias and figure out which one is which. So I will post those both with the YouTube lesson, and I'll post them on the Seaside UCC Facebook page with the video of the lesson. And I want you to go through those scenarios and match them up. And it'll only take a couple minutes. It's not too difficult, but it will get you thinking about it a little bit more. And the thing about bias, so if we try to, and we all have a little bit of bias here and there, it's hard not to. But if you can be aware of those biases, you can try to avoid them when you're making decisions. And if you can make better decisions, you can reduce conflict. And that is one way to make a little step towards peace. So that is it for today. I'll see you next week. I think I may even see you in person next week, which is very exciting. It will be great to see you guys. You guys are probably like taller than me now, right? So until then, have a great week. Enjoy this nice summery weather. Be safe and be kind.